I was watching, and I could not believe what I saw. My heart raced as I stared at the phone screen, where my mother sat at our family dining table, wine glass in hand, completely unaware that she was being broadcast to the internet. "Oh, just stop," my mom said sarcastically, rolling her eyes exaggeratedly. My daughter believes selling houses means she is successful. She couldn't cut it in nursing school, and now she's just floundering through life like a hopeless loser. An hour ago, my cousin Jenna had texted me. "You need to see this." I'm so sorry. She'd included a link to her most recent live stream, one of her many ongoing attempts to become a social media influencer. I was out of town at a real estate conference in Providence when the family broke bread on Sunday. I was barely unpacked in my hotel room when the message arrived. My name is SCD Sullivan. I am 32 years old, and for the last 5 years, I have been secretly paying my mother's medical bills since her rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis. I've been carting her to appointments, filing her insurance paperwork, paying for her medication, all while working 60-hour weeks to keep my real estate business afloat in Boston. Nobody seated at that dinner table had any idea that I had wiped out my savings account last year after her insurance refused to pay for a specific treatment. "Oh, it's such a shame," my mother said on the video, all but preening for the rapt attention of my aunts and uncles. All these big dreams to become a nurse, and now she just sells houses to people who got it made. She laughed, and to my horror, I heard my uncle and aunt snorting along with her. Everything was captured by Jenna's camera. I could tell she was shooting from her lap, perhaps attempting to be incognito while chronicling mundane family life for her social media audience. My mother didn't know she was being recorded, making her words even more devastating. "Remember when she quit nursing school?" My mother turned to my aunt. She would come home crying how difficult were the exams. Pathetic, and she's acting like her selling a house every few months makes her like this successful person. Actually, I had deferred my nursing education to care for her when her illness became serious. I was making good money doing real estate, but whatever more I earned went to her medical treatment, not back to school. S just doesn't have it. My mother sighed dramatically, reaching for a glass of wine, the same wine I bought for family dinners. They're just not built to be successful. The live stream dragged on another grueling minute before Jenna finally turned the camera away. I sat frozen in my hotel room, tears streaming down my face with the bitter truth settling in. For years I had told myself that my mother's occasional harsh words were simply her pain speaking, or her old-school methodology for motivation. But this was not just a momentary lapse. This was her true self. Now there was irrefutable evidence. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jenna. "I'm so sorry you had to witness that." What she was saying didn't sink in until it was too late. Should I delete the video right away? I looked at the message for a long moment. No, I typed back. "Leave it up. When I get home tomorrow, I need to share something with you." The drive back from Providence the following morning was a fog. I hardly remembered checking out of the hotel or the 2-hour drive home. I kept hearing my mother's words echoing in my head, her laughter as she belittled the career I had built to care for her. 5 years ago, I was living an entirely different life. I was 27, in the middle of nursing school, doing well. I always wanted to be a nurse, to help people, to make a difference. And then came the call that changed everything. Mom had collapsed at her job and been taken to the hospital. The diagnosis, rheumatoid arthritis, aggressive enough that it would need constant treatment and care. "It's not fair," she had wept from her hospital bed. "What am I to pay for all this? The insurance doesn't really cover anything." I'd taken her hand and told her I'd help. "Mom, we'll work it out together." My father had died when I was in high school, and Mom and I have been each other's support since. Despite the harsh words she leveled at me and her criticisms, I had thought we had a bond that meant something. Growing up, she made sacrifices for me, taking on extra shifts, ensuring I had opportunities. Now it was time for me to rise up. Months later, I decided to take a break from my nursing education. It offered flexibility, flexible hours, and the potential for good money. I could take Mom to her appointments, manage her care, and still make enough to cover the increasing costs. It was meant to be temporary, just until she stabilized. just until I could save enough to go back to school again. But temporary became years. Mom's condition improved with the treatments, but she still required costly medications, regular specialist visits, and physical therapy. I had taken over her health care, arguing for hours with insurance companies, researching treatment options. "You're so responsible now," she would say occasionally during rare moments of gratitude. Those words had kept me going through countless sleepless nights and stressful work weeks. I parked in my driveway, sitting there in silence. I hadn't told Mom that I was coming back today. She thought I was still in Providence, schmoozing with other realtors. A chance I had ended when I watched the video. My phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. "I'm at the coffee shop on Maple. They can meet whenever you are ready." I paused and collected my thoughts. I opened my laptop bag and took out a folder labeled MOM Medical. Inside was a meticulously detailed record of every payment I'd made over 5 years. Every insurance premium, every medication charge, every specialist appointment. All organized with receipts and bank statements. I had been preserving these records for tax purposes, not realizing they would also document a betrayal. I collected the folder, breathed one more breath of steadiness, and texted Jenna back. "Be there in 15 minutes. The cafe was bustling, but I suddenly saw Jenna. At 16, she was hard to miss with her bright blue hair and huge headphones. Her face crumpled with guilt when she saw me. "I'm so sorry, SED," she exclaimed when I sat down. I didn't know that she was going to say all these things. I was just minding my own live stream, and then Aunt Patricia started saying stuff about you, and it was so cruel and... "It's not your fault," I said, interrupting her babbling. "In fact, I owe you a thank you." Jenna looked confused. "Thank you for what?" I set the medical folder down on the table and flipped it open to reveal 5 years of paperwork. Payment records, appointment schedules, and insurance correspondence. "For teaching me the truth," I said softly. "I've been paying everything. Her medications, her treatments, her insurance premiums, everything." Jenna flipped through the documents, her eyes widening. "This is more than 100,000, actually." I replied, "I sacrificed my whole life for her. My nursing degree, my savings, some relationships. Everything got put on the back burner because I thought she needed me." Jenna glanced up, her shock replaced by anger. "And she calls you a failure? That's so messed up." I nodded, and a strange calm swept over me. I always thought the criticism was her motivation for me, that in the end, she appreciated the work I was doing. I laughed bitterly. Guess I was wrong. "So what are you going to do?" Jenna asked. "I'm done," I said. "In fact, I've already prepared a letter to disentitle me from her accounts." "You're not going to ask her about it?" I shook my head. What would be the point? She'd just deny it or say I'm being too sensitive. I took out my phone, opened my banking app. The cash I had saved up every month, with the hope of taking the nursing school plunge again someday, I moved into my individual savings account. The gesture was small, but it felt monumental. "Wow," Jenna whispered. "Are you sure?" I have never been more confident in anything. Several months ago, I showed her the acceptance letter for my nursing program. "I'm beginning to fall," I told her, "and I'm not deferring again." Jenna squeezed my hand. "I'll send you the entire video in case you need." And this was the last place we met, and I walked out, feeling the burden of years of obligation swept from both of our shoulders. It was the first time in a long time that I was picking myself. The guilt I thought I would feel before retiring was nowhere in sight. In its place was something that, truth be told, had been lacking for far too long, a sense of clarity and purpose. The representative from the insurance company sounded baffled when I called. "You want to get yourself off as the guarantor on Patricia Sullivan's accounts?" "May I ask why?" "Personal reasons," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I am not going to pay you any more after this month." It was the third day of my renewed determination. I had spent the weekend in productive panic, calling insurance companies, updating payment info, composing emails. The paperwork was not on my dining room table. I was methodically unweaving the financial net that I had built to support my mother. "Miss Sullivan," the representative went on, I should let you know that if you do not cancel, your mother's premium will be increased by a significant amount, and it is possible that her coverage will change. I understand. I paused. Will you send a formal letter to her home address advising of these changes? I want to make sure she has all the facts. I knew full well what I was doing. The letter would come in a week, just the time I needed to put the rest of my plan in place before the inevitable showdown. My phone from yesterday had been vibrating with messages from my mother. She didn't know what I was doing, of course, but she'd expected me to take her to a doctor's appointment this morning. I hadn't shown up. Where are you? I had been waiting for an hour. The doctor's office called. They told me my insurance card was rejected. Fix it ASAP. Are you ignoring me? Answer your damn phone. And every message cemented my resolve. I silenced my phone and went back to work. By the evening, I had done the majority of separating out the financials and moved on to phase 2. I pulled out my laptop and began writing one-to-one email, carefully worded, that would be sent to the whole of my extended family. Dear family, after due consideration, I will no longer be involved in managing my mother's medical care or financial support. I have paid for everything pertaining to her illness for the last 5 years, more than $120,000. This has included insurance premiums, medication costs, specialist visits, and many treatments. While I have made this decision for personal humanitarian reasons, I felt you all should be made aware of this information, as my mother may need help going forward. I have attached a breakdown of support I have provided throughout the years. If any of you wish to help, please understand that this was an easy decision for me to make. Best regards, S. I attached a spreadsheet I devised to keep track of every payment and every appointment and every hour I'd spent tending to her care. The evidence was irrefutable. My cousin Jenna had already sent me the full live stream video with all of her footage, like she promised. I downloaded it and saved several copies, one on my computer, one in my cloud storage, and one on a USB drive. I didn't have any plans yet for the video, but something told me it would be needed. And then the doorbell rang. Startling me, I looked through the peephole and saw my mother on my porch, her face twisted with rage. I took a step back, my heart pounding. S, I know you're in there. Open this door right now. I was quiet while her shadow passed under the door. You have missed 3 of my calls. My pharmacy denied my medication refill. What are you doing? I drew a deep breath and spoke distinctly through the door. Mom, I'm not doing this anymore. The insurance company will be sending you information shortly. I will recommend to you, go read this thing with care today. What are you talking about? Open this door. No. That one word had a weight to it on my lips. I've listened to what you really think of me. I believe it is in our best interest to move on with our lives. She paused, and then exploded into confused silence. Is this about money? After all I did for you? I almost chuckled at its irony. Goodbye, Mom. Please don't come back. As her protest grew louder, I walked away from the door and went back to my laptop to finish what I'd started. Every movement made me unburden myself from something I had had on me for simply too long. The fallout came swiftly. Within hours of my email going out, my phone was blowing up. My abandonment horrified and disgusted Aunt Maureen. Uncle James thought I was selfish and unkind. My cousin Thomas recommended I resolve whatever petty squabble I had with Mom. Only Jenna and, bizarrely, my ancient Aunt Bridget appeared to get it. Bridget's message was simple. It takes courage to defend yourself, dear. If you need anything, call me. The first thing I did was block my mother's number. Then, one by one, I muted the relatives who couldn't even be bothered to ask for my side of the story. The silence that followed was eerily calm. 3 days later, I was seated in the admissions office of Boston City Nursing School, completing the re-enrollment paperwork for the fall semester. Miss Sullivan, you haven't partaken in the program in quite a while. The advisor looked at my file. But you have a strong academic record. You will have to take a placement exam to see if any refresher courses are needed. I see, I said, my heart racing. I'd begun rereading my old textbooks. As I crossed campus afterward, I had a sense of belonging that had eluded me for years. This is where I'm meant to be, chasing my own dreams, not existing in service of someone else's needs. I would need to adjust my real estate business to work around my class schedule, but I had begun to make these plans. I'd work with fewer clients, target higher value property, and employ a part-time assistant to handle administrative work. The income would be less, but given my mother's expenses, I could handle it. Coming home, there was a stiff-looking envelope in the mail. Inside it was a letter from the insurance company addressed to my mother, but erroneously sent to my address. It explained the changes to her coverage and the steep increase in premiums now that I was no longer the guarantor. I should have felt guilty. Instead, I felt vindicated. My phone rang. "Jenna, have you seen what's going in the family group chat?" she asked without preamble. "I've exited all those chats," I said. "What's going on?" "Your mother is telling everyone you've had some sort of mental breakdown. She's saying that you've been under stress from your failing business, and that's the reason you're acting out." I could hear the air quotes in Jenna's voice. She's totally turning things around. I sighed, unsurprised. Classic deflection. "And that's not the end," Jenna said. She didn't see that I was still in the chat, and she'd already managed to get Aunt Morin to agree to let her crash there temporarily, until her medical stuff got sorted out. Of course she had. I shook my head. Mom had always been skilled in finding someone to save her. I hung up, opened my laptop, and stared at the video file Jenna had sent me, the live stream that changed everything. I hadn't seen it since that first awful watch in my hotel room. My finger hovered over the play button. That recording had power. Power to show everyone exactly who my mother was behind closed doors, to clear myself against her lies. But did I require that validation? They who believed her story without even asking for mine, were they worth convincing? I shut the laptop and didn't watch the video. If I needed the evidence, I had it. But for now, I had more pressing matters to tend to. I had finished my nursing application. I'd even set my placement exam. For the first time in years, I was making plans for my future instead of dealing with someone else's crisis. The insurance letter was on my counter, a subtle reminder of the things I had embarked on. After some thought, I wrote my mother's actual address on a new envelope, inserted the letter, and included a brief note. "Someone accidentally sent this to my address. I recommend you read it thoroughly. No signature, no emotion, just facts." And as the envelope disappeared into the mailbox, I sensed yet another mantle of weight falling from my shoulder. The cost of her behavior now belonged to her, and not me. It was 2 weeks of relative calm. I focused all of my energy on getting ready for nursing school, studying whenever I had a spare moment between real estate showings and client meetings. I had a placement exam on Friday, and with each practice test I took, I was increasingly convinced I would pass. Then came the ambush. I had just completed a showing of a 3-bedroom colonial in Brookline when I saw them in my rear-view mirror, my mother and Aunt Morin, standing next to my mother's car in the lot. My immediate reaction was to turn and drive away, but they spotted me. Running would just delay the unavoidable. I exhaled deeply and exited my vehicle. "Sinead," my mother said in sickly sweet tones, "we need to talk." Up close, I saw a strain on her face. Her hair was uncurled, and she leaned almost entirely on her cane, which she generally only did when she wanted to highlight her disability. "I don't know what to say," I said, clutching my keys. Aunt Morin stepped forward. "Your mother has gone through it. Sinead, her medication costs have risen 3-fold, and she can no longer get appointments with her specialists. Is that what you wanted?" "What I wanted," I replied cautiously, "was to be respected and appreciated at the most basic level. What I wanted was acknowledgement for 5 years of sacrifice. All I wanted was a mother who didn't talk behind my back and call me a desperate failure." My mother's face paled. "What are you talking about?" "I saw the video, Mom. Jenna's live stream from the family dinner." I met her gaze steadily. "I listened to everything you said about me." Her face flickered with recognition, only to be replaced by an anger that was defensive. "You are taking things out of context. I was just getting a bit of frustration off my chest. Everyone does that." Aunt Morin looked confused. "What video?" "Patricia, what's she talking about?" I nearly chuckled at the irony. My mother had not even informed her closest aides of the live stream, She probably hoped I would never find out. If you want, show her the video, I told my mother. Or don't. It doesn't change anything. I've made my decision. Her voice broke. I'm your mother, Sinead. After all I have done for you, how could you turn your back on me when I need you the most? Something snapped inside me. Years of pent-up resentment erupted to surface. All that you've done for me? I echoed incredulously. Let me tell you what I've done for you. I put my entire life on hold. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on your care. I took you to every appointment, filled every prescription, a leash going back and forth with insurance companies for you. And in return, you call me pathetic. You mock my career, the career I built to support you. I was trembling, but my voice didn't shake. What did I send proof of to the whole family? Every payment, every appointment, every sacrifice. So don't just sit here and pretend I'm the villain in this. Aunt Maureen was looking at my mother in a new way, a little doubt seeping into her expression. Patricia, she said very slowly, what was in this video exactly? My mother paid her no mind, directing all her desperation toward me. I am sorry if I have hurt your feelings, but this is a huge overreaction. I'm experiencing major health complications. I know, I said calmly, and I have stayed by your side for 5 years straight. Now it's someone else's turn. I turned to Aunt Maureen. She's living with you now, correct? Has she asked you for money yet? How many doctor's appointments have you driven her to? How many prescriptions have you picked up? Aunt Maureen's silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. I turned back to my car. I wish you both well, but I won't continue to be manipulated. This isn't over. My mother shouted after me. You don't just walk away from family. I stopped, my hand on the car door. You're right about one thing, Mom. Family doesn't turn their back on family. But family also doesn't break each other apart or exploit each other. So perhaps ask yourself, who actually left first? I looked in the rearview mirror as I drove away. My mother was waving her hands around wildly, clearly fuming at Aunt Maureen about something. Some things don't change, I thought, but I had changed. And when I returned home to continue studying for my nursing exam, I found I no longer felt guilty. I felt free for the first time in years. 3 months flew by in a blur of action. I passed my nursing placement test, signed up for school's accelerated program for returned education students, and revamped my real estate business around my new schedule. Kylie, a college student and bright young woman, I'd hired to be my part-time assistant in charge of organization and scheduling showings while I was in class. The transition was anything but seamless. There were late nights, scheduling conflicts and moments of self-doubt, but every small victory was proof I had made the right decision. It felt like a weight I had been carrying for some time had been lifted, and I was able to wake up every day with a new, fresh energy, with the desire and drive to get things done. My home atmosphere had hit an uncomfortable impasse. After her confrontation in the parking lot, my mother had apparently revealed those true colors to Aunt Maureen, who reached out quietly to me about a week later. I didn't know what the fuck you had been going through, she confessed over coffee. Patricia tells me you were being difficult and selfish. I should have readers. What's your first impression of Jones's character? It's okay, I told her. To my own surprise, I meant it. Mom has always been great at controlling the narrative. The Boston Real Estate Association's annual award ceremony had never been on my radar previously. I had never had time to attend industry events. I was too busy managing my mother's care. But I could hardly believe it when I was nominated for the Resilience in Real Estate Award, given to agents who surmounted serious obstacles while keeping their work afloat by my broker. You're a shoo-in, my colleague Jeffrey said during our weekly office meeting. You've closed more deals than anyone in the office, and managed to do that while starting nursing school. If that isn't resilience, I don't know what is. I never expected to win, but I was looking forward to the ceremony, an opportunity to celebrate how far I'd come, both professionally and personally. Ceremony night came, and there I was in a hotel ballroom with the Boston real estate crowd. I wore a dark blue dress I had purchased just for that night, my first non-work-related splurge in years. Once I picked up a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. I mixed and mingled with my colleagues and caught up with industry contacts I hadn't seen in years. "Cecilia Sullivan," called a familiar voice. I turned and saw Margot Stevens, one of Boston's most successful brokers. "I was expecting to see you here," she said. "That's something I've been hearing about your work in the Brookline market." As we talk about the latest trends in real estate, I felt the easy flow of the conversation, in which I was fully engaged, a welcome change from the distracted and overwhelmed person I had been for so long. My phone shook inside my clutch. At first, I ignored it, as I was fully engaged in the professional moment I was experiencing. When it vibrated again a minute later, I excused myself and looked at the screen. 5 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize and a text message. "It's Jenna," on Uncle Patrick's phone. "Emergency. Call back ASAP." A knot formed in my stomach. I walked into a quiet corridor and called back. "Jenna, what's going on?" "I'm so sorry to bother you," said Jenna, her voice tight. "Your mom and I were at the hospital. It fell, and they believe it was a reaction to her new medication. She's asking for you." I closed my eyes, steeling myself for the inevitable wave of guilt and obligation. It arrived, albeit differently this time, manageable instead of debilitating. "Is she stable?" I asked. "Yes, but she's going to stay overnight for observation." I didn't want to call, but Uncle Patrick made me. Muffled voices. Then the rustling of the phone passing from one person to another said, "It's Patrick. Listen, I know it hasn't been easy, but your mom needs you. We cannot answer questions the doctors have about her medical history." I watched the ceremony attendees filed into the ballroom as he spoke. The awards presentation was about to begin. "I see," I said, deciding. "But I'm actually at an important work event right now. I'll stop by the hospital when it's done." "Took your mother." Patrick's voice hardened. "Whatever party you're at can wait." The old me would have crumbled immediately, dropping everything and running to her. But that wasn't who I was anymore. "I'll be there in approximately 2 hours," I told him adamantly. "Tell the doctors I'll answer all questions later." And Patrick, thanks for being there for her. I hung up the call and took a deep breath. As I spun back to face the ceremony, I saw my reflection in a decorative mirror, shoulders back, head high, eyes clear. I saw myself for the first time in years. "And the Resilience in Real Estate Award goes to," said Sullivan. Applause erupted around me. I sat there for a moment stunned. I hadn't thought I was going to win. Jeffrey poked my elbow, grinning. "Go on." I stood up and walked to the stage. The crystal trophy was solid and heavy in my hands. I approached the microphone, looked out at the crowd, colleagues, mentors, even competitors, united in recognition of the work I had done. The validation was absolutely overwhelming. "Thank you." I started, my voice strong as I didn't feel. "This means more to me than words can express. These last few years have been hard, balancing a demanding career with personal responsibilities. And there were many days I wasn't sure I could carry on. I hesitated, remembering how many nights I had spent researching options for my mother's treatment, preparing for showings in the early morning after sleepless nights of worry. "But real estate isn't simply about selling homes," I said. "Resilience is more than just finding solutions in the face of obstacles, when things don't go as planned, or adapting to changing markets. Those same things helped me through my own challenges and ultimately brought me back to my one true love, nursing." A ripple of interest went through the crowd. Now I'm in nursing school while serving my real estate clients, and wouldn't even want it any other way. So this award isn't just evidence of professional resilience. It's proof that we can reinvent ourselves at any moment in our lives. Thank you for this honor. The applause trailed me back to my seat, where Jeffrey and my colleagues offered exuberant handshakes and hugs. When I finally looked at my phone, it was almost 9 p.m., 3 missed calls from Uncle Patrick, a text from Jenna. "She's stable. Take your time." I collected my things, said my farewells, and made my way to my car, the trophy wrapped gingerly in my tote bag. It was a 20-minute drive across town to a hospital, and I used it to mentally prepare for the inevitable confrontation. When I walked into the hospital room, my mother was sitting up in bed, and she seemed remarkably alert considering that she just had a serious medical emergency. Beside her sat Uncle Patrick. Next to the window stood Jenna, waiting awkwardly. Finally, my mother said, her voice clipped, "Ven's idle. Really good of you to squeeze us into your schedule." I put my tote bag down, the off-gutter trophy box showing. "Hello, Mom. I came right after my event ended. How are you feeling?" "How do you think I'm doing, man?" she snapped. I collapsed. "I could have died, and you were too busy partying to care." Uncle Patrick coughed. "The doctor said it was probably a reaction to the new medication. They have made adjustments to the dosage, and she should be perfectly fine to go home tomorrow." I nodded, keeping my face impassive. "That's good news. I'm just relieved that it wasn't worse." My mother's face curled in frustration at my steadiness. "This never would have happened if you just hadn't left me. My new insurance is useless. My medications cost a fortune, and these doctors don't know my condition like my specialists did." "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied genuinely. "I can imagine it is hard to get used to new doctors." My understated reply seemed only to enrage her further. "That's it after all you put me through?" I glanced at Jenna, who was flushed but gave me a small nod of encouragement. "Mom," I said softly, "I was there for you for 5 years. I canceled my life to ensure you received best care possible. And all you gave me back in return was the desperate failure you became. You fucking mocked the very career that paid for your treatments. You laughed at my dreams." Uncle Patrick frowned. "What are you talking about?" Jenna paused, as if hoping to take a step back. "The video, Uncle Patrick. The live stream I accidentally captured over my dinner a few months ago. Your mom didn't tell you about that." My mother's face paled. "That is totally irrelevant," said as contorting things to rationalize her self-serving actions. I opened my tote bag and fished out the trophy, which I placed on the bedside table. The light caught the crystal, its engraving precise. "Preserving through resilience in real estate," said Sullivan. "I won an award tonight," I said, glancing at Uncle Patrick, "for running a successful business in the face of great adversity. Those included financial and medical support for Mom for 5 years, while she was talking behind my back and belittling my accomplishments." Realization settled on his face as he glanced from the trophy to my mother, whose demeanor had shifted to defensive. "I didn't come here to fight," I said. "I came because you needed medical information, and I wanted to make sure you were okay. I don't wish you ill, Mom. I never have." I looked her in the eye, calm and unmoved, helping someone in need, but without the kind of sacrifice that took from me, so I could focus on my life without feeling I was giving my life away. The room fell silent. For once, there were no quick retorts from my mother, no manipulation tactic waiting to be deployed. She just stared at the trophy, tangible evidence of the success she had been so cavalier about. "I should go," I said softly. "I have class early tomorrow morning. Jenna, can I drive you home?" As we exited, I saw Uncle Patrick speaking to my mother in a muffled, interrogative timbre. The conversation I'd avoided for months was finally taking place. Only this time, I wouldn't be the one fighting to be heard. 3 months later, I was standing in my fresh white uniform, and my hands were steady as I pushed the floor for my patient. My nursing instructor stood by, nodding approvingly at my technique. "Excellent work, Sullivan. You are rapidly advancing your clinical skills." I grinned while I tied off the line. "Thank you. It's like everything is finally falling into place." When I finished my shift at a teaching hospital, I walked to my car and stopped to check my phone. My screen lit up with a text from Jenna. "Prof interview going viral. 20K views already." I giggled, shaking my head in disbelief. Last week, I was interviewed by the Boston Medical Journal about career changers entering nursing in later life. The interviewer was especially focused on how I had leveraged my real estate experience to work in healthcare. Both fields require attention to detail, strong communication skills, and the ability to help people through major life transitions, I had written. And both were great teachers and taught me about boundaries, something every healthcare professional needs. As I was driving home, my phone rang throughout the car's Bluetooth. An unknown number. "Hello?" Sood, it's Patrick. My uncle sounded hesitant on the other end. Do you have a minute? I tensed slightly. Is everything okay? Yes, everything's fine. He paused. I saw your interview. It was quite inspiring. Thank you, I said, shocked by the compliment. Your mother saw it too, he said softly. I waited expectantly for the latest news of her criticism or complaint. She didn't say much, Patrick added. But I think seeing you in that nursing uniform tipped it over for her. Seeing you actually doing it made it real for her. You really are doing it, becoming a nurse just like you always wanted. I cruised into my driveway but left the car running, processing his words. I'm proud of you, Sood, he said, breaking the silence. And I'm sorry I didn't recognize what was happening sooner. And the simple acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes. Thank you, Patrick. That means a lot. When we hung up, I sat for a moment, thinking about how much had changed in the span of less than a year. The trophy from the real estate award that sat on my mantel now, next to my nursing textbooks, were tangible reminders of my past achievements and future goals. My mother and I were still not talking, but that was fine. I learned to stop waiting for someone to validate me who wasn't able to do that. I found it instead in my own accomplishments, in the patients who thanked me for my care, in the professional recognition that validated my choices. Entering my home, my sacred space, I smiled at the pile of nursing journals on the coffee table. Tonight, I would study for next week's exam, maybe call Jenna later to catch up. Tomorrow, I have 2 property visits scheduled between classes. My life was rich, fulfilling, and completely mine. Patrick's phone call was an unexpected grace note, not interdependent in the mind map of my happiness, but embraced nonetheless. Whether my mother ever accepted my decision no longer defined me. I had taken my path back, my future back, and most importantly, my self-esteem back. And that, I understood as I sat down to study, was the biggest victory.